On this week's show, the Georgia Southern baseball team wins another series on the road and come home to play the Citadel. We'll have highlights, and we'll also take a look at this year's spring blue-white game with highlights and interviews, all that and more, as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And we have baseball behind us, but we're going to begin with some spring football because anytime football's in session, not season, but session.
It's always in season.
It's always in season, and people are always anxious to talk and, hear about what's going on the football field. And of course, it couldn't have looked any nicer. I'm still a little hesitant to go yay for the turf, but it sure looked nice. And the product on the field, I guess it's a little too early to tell. We know Coach Summers did not unveil everything, and we were only allowed to shoot one quarter, so that's all the highlights you'll see. But your thoughts on the spring game?
Well, first and foremost, personally, I don't mind the turf one bit. It looks great, like you said. Honestly, I think that might be the most important part. Players these days, they've played on grass, they've played on turf. The turf nowadays is way more advanced than the AstroTurf of 20, 30 years ago, even more advanced than the original field turf that was basically a somewhat softer version of original AstroTurf. So I think in terms of coolness, in terms of safety, in terms of performance, it's just as good as regular grass. So I'm willing to drop the argument right there. In my book, it looks good, it feels good, I walked on it just fine. I'm sure the players think the same way, but on to the important things, the performance of the Eagles. Like you said, Josh, we didn't see the entire arsenal. You never do in a spring game. Really what spring really is glorified practice. They're just going through some sets, getting some people healthy, getting some new people integrated. Unfortunately for the Eagles, a few injuries that didn't let them be at full strength. The offensive line especially having to go both ways in the game. But we saw basically what I expected to see, a couple of skill position guys showing out, Chaz Thornton, a few good runs. The passing game for the, 5th, 6th, 7th consecutive year has been an issue during the offseason. It seems like the Eagles have gone to more of a short, maybe West Coast style passing game, a few really crisp routes and throws. I guess I'll leave it up to the audience what they think of it, but from what I saw, I think that Coach Summers has to be happy with what he saw from his passing game.
And who gets the annual Steve Kadari Spring MVP award? I think there was a lot of talk about the Bradwell quarterback who was out there that turned a lot of heads that not many people knew about.
Well, he did. That would be LeBaron Anthony. Mm-hmm. He looks like he's got a great arm. He had some really good runs, which is what you're going to need to do if you're ever planning on being a Georgia Southern quarterback. I think, though, you've got to give it to Chaz Thornton. He's the only one that reached the end zone twice, had the longest play of the day with a 45-yard touchdown run. We've seen what he can do in real games last year. Not too often that you see a guy show out in the spring game after he's already proved it on the field the previous fall. But all in all, there were a few good performances, a few so-so performances. That's why I think the Eagles have another full week of spring practice after the spring game.
Well, unfortunately, we were not able to shoot some of Chaz Thornton's touchdowns, and I don't really want to go through at artist renderings and things like that, so you'll just have to take our word for it.
He was fast.
If you weren't there. We were able to shoot some of the first quarter, and we also were able to interview Coach and some of the players after the blue-white game. The Georgia Southern Eagles hitting the field on the new artificial turf at Paulson Stadium for the first time for the annual blue-white game. Under the leadership of first-year head coach Tyson Summers, the option still in effect. Fabian Upshaw running it nicely here. The passing game in effect as well. Kevin Ellison in at quarterback. The Eagles continuing to work out of the shotgun here. Upshaw with another nice run. Upshaw and Ellison splitting time most of the first quarter. The only quarter media was allowed to shoot. The game finished with a score of 27-7. The white team winning. Afterward, the players were presented their GoDaddy Bowl championship rings in a small ceremony, and after that, signed autographs for the fans. Overall, Coach Summers sees room for improvement, but was quite pleased with how things went overall.
One of the things that I've always believed is that you try to start off and try to use it as an opportunity to develop some of your passing game. That's what I've always thought scrimmages were for. We certainly spend the majority of the time in our practices being able to work on our option pictures, but it's not really what we had an opportunity to do today. So we wanted to make sure we got good a lot of the one-back looks that we were trying to run, a lot of our inside zone, outside zone, and then have an opportunity to be able to throw the ball. That's what we were trying to get accomplished, and I thought we did an okay job of that.
It went well, man. You know, guys came out here, competed hard. You know, got the younger guys in there. You know, get them some looks, and you know, everybody competed well. So I'm pretty pleased.
It was good. I think everybody came out there with the right mindset. You know, I think we want to go as fast as possible and, you know, try to execute and just play physical. And I think we did pretty good there.
I know there was a few mistakes made out there, just some stuff we're gonna clean up. But other than that, we did a great job overall.
Well, next up, hopefully we'll get Matt Breida in the house. We'll get some of the offensive linemen that were injured back as the Eagles start pre-fall camp there in August. Well, let's move back to the baseball diamond. We're the Georgia Southern baseball team coming off a win at home against the Citadel in a midweek series. And then this past weekend, you know, Georgia Southern was on the road doing what they do, and that's winning another series on the road.
I guess you could say it's a bizarro season. I don't know if that's positive, negative, but the Eagles continue to win on the road in conference. They continue to struggle at home. Hopefully they can get that turned around. They're home again this weekend against Little Rock, a team that's a little bit surprising down at the bottom of the rankings last year. Much like their men's basketball team, they've really skyrocketed. A couple of highlight players that are really buoying the team right now. But Georgia Southern, they've been, I guess, inconsistent in the losses, but their consistency is what gets them wins. This isn't a team that would be an A+ in any of the rankings, you know, hitting, power pitching, fielding. But they're a team that when they come to play, when they play their best game, they do everything very well, and when it all comes together, you get series like UT Arlington where they have an off game on Friday, but then they show up on Saturday, not desperate, but really in the mood to win a couple of games, needing to win a couple of games, and they go out and look like a very good team getting the job done.
And Chase Cohen has been lights out there as your number 2 starter, I guess, your Saturday. Most of the time this Saturday is the middle of the 3. This time there was a doubleheader, so Chase Cohen played a really great game there on Saturday in the first game on the road. Let's see if they can keep it going. As you mentioned, 3-game home series coming up this weekend. They also had a couple of games with the Citadel. Let's get out and take a look at some of the highlights. The Georgia Southern Eagles welcoming their former SoCon rivals, the Citadel, Tuesday night. The Bulldogs start the scoring as Jason Smith collects the solo home run off Lawson Humphreys, and it's 1-0 Bulldogs. Humphreys able to settle down from there, getting the inning-ending strikeout. The Eagle defense stepping up. Evan McDonald deep in the hole makes the grab and the throw, and Ryan Cleveland there to make the leaping tag for out number 3. Cleveland then getting it done at the plate as he starts a second-inning rally with the single to right. Next up, it's Hunter Thomas with the single into center. Cleveland scores and we're tied at 1-1. In the third, check out the play in center by Logan Baldwin making the diving grab. In the bottom half of the inning, the Eagles pull ahead. Ryan Cleveland doubles down the line to make it 3-1. Next up, Jordan Wren, the batter, and he singles into right. Cleveland scores, and it's 4-1. The Bulldogs get another run back, this time on the Stephen Wyndham home run. But this just a solo shot, and that's as close as it would get. The Eagles get 1 run back in the 7th, coming up on a wild pitch. They'd get another on a fielder's choice in the next inning, and they'd go on to take this one by a final count of 10-2. Well, Mike, as we mentioned, back home this weekend for a 3-game series. As for the softball team, we knew they were going to have their hands full this past weekend. They lost 2 out of 3 against South Alabama. Now they go on the road. The men's golf team starts the Sun Belt tournament down in Destin this weekend.
Defending their championship.
There you go. And as for the women, congratulations. 4th place in the Sun Belt in your first year in existence. Pretty nice for the Georgia Southern women.
I don't think they could have asked for any more. Anytime you start something from scratch, you can't expect to be right at the top right away, especially in the Sun Belt. You know, you just look at the schools, look at the geography of the schools. These are teams that can play all year round. They've been in existence for a while. You know they're going to have seasoned veteran players, probably good players if they're playing in such great climates. Georgia Southern able to get a couple of transfers, a couple of good freshmen in right away. 4th place in a conference like this. I think it's about the best you could have asked for. And now looking at where Georgia Southern is, you look at the Golden Isles, you look at St. Simons, Myrtle Beach, all those golf-heavy places just within a couple hours drive. I think that you're looking at a new, maybe power coming up in the Sun Belt.
All right, well, for now, that'll wrap things up. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.